Her top-floor apartment was nicer than anything I could ever afford. It had marble floors, amazing city views, and was pure luxury. When Valentina invited me up to talk about my late rent, I thought she was going to kick me out. Instead, she offered me something totally different. Something that would change our relationship as landlady and tenant forever. This is a true story from the human memories, where stories like this come to life. My name is Caleb, and this is the story of how being broke led me to the most surprising relationship of my life. I'm 25, just out of college with a marketing degree. It got me a starting job at an agency in Seattle. The pay was okay for a first job, but in a city like Seattle, okay pay doesn't get you very far, especially when you have student loans. That's how I ended up in apartment to be at Sterling Heights. An old warehouse turned into apartments in the middle of the city. The place wasn't fancy at all. It had brick walls, floors that creaked, and heating that only worked sometimes. It was my place, and I could walk to work from there. The building was owned by a huge real estate company that seemed to own half of Seattle. I had signed my lease with a management company, so I never actually met the owner until I was 3 weeks late on my rent. I'd been struggling for months with student loans, car insurance, and groceries. Everything cost more than I had planned. I was living from one paycheck to the next, and when my laptop broke and I had to buy a new one for work, all my rent money was gone. I kept telling myself I'd catch up next month, maybe get some side work or sell some things. But next month came, and I was still short. That's when I got the letter. It was pushed under my door on a Tuesday morning. It was on expensive paper and sounded very professional, but the message was simple: pay up or get out. There was a number to call and a deadline that was coming up fast. But what I really noticed was the name signed at the bottom: Valentina, cross owner. I'd heard her name around the building. The secret owner who was never around but somehow knew everything that happened. Some people said they'd seen her once or twice and always said she was classy, scary, and could make you feel small with just a look. I decided to call the number on the letter. Cross Properties, how can I help you? The voice said. Hi, I'm calling about my rent. I got a letter from Ms. Cross about being late. One moment, please. I was put on hold for what felt like forever. Just when I was about to hang up, a different voice came on. It was smooth and confident. This is Valentina. Cross. You must be Caleb from to be. My stomach dropped. Yes, ma'am. I'm calling about my rent. I know I'm behind, but I can explain. I'm sure you can, she said, but not in a mean way. But I like to talk about these things in person. Are you free this evening? Yes, I think so. Good. Come to my apartment on the top floor at 7 o'clock. We'll figure this out. The line went dead. That evening, I stood in front of the elevator in my building, holding an envelope with about half the rent money I owed. My hands were shaking a little as I pushed the button for the top floor. Never been up there. I didn't even know there was a top-floor apartment until that call. The elevator opened right into her home, and I walked into a world I'd only seen in magazines. Huge windows showed a full view of the city. The place was huge, probably 3 times bigger than my whole apartment. Everything was white and gold, with marble and glass and art that looked like it belonged in a museum. And there she was. Valentina Cross stood by the windows with the city lights behind her. She was tall, maybe around 5'7", with platinum blonde hair that fell perfectly past her shoulders. She was wearing a white silk shirt and a black skirt that fit her body perfectly. Even from far away, I could tell she was beautiful. Caleb, she said, turning to me, right on time. Up close, she was even prettier than I had imagined. She looked to be in her early 40s, but she had the kind of beauty that doesn't show age, the kind that comes from good genes and expensive skincare. Her eyes were a bright green, and her smile was both warm and a little dangerous. Miss Cross, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Thank you for meeting with me. Please, call me Valentina. And you're welcome. Can I get you a drink? Before I could answer, she was walking to a bar cart that probably cost more than I made in a month. She poured herself a glass of red wine and looked at me. Sure, whatever you're having. She handed me a glass, and our fingers touched for a second. Her skin was soft and warm. So, she said, sitting in a cream-colored chair and crossing her legs, tell me about your problem. I sat on the edge of the sofa across from her, suddenly feeling how much I didn't belong there in my casual pants and shirt. I'm behind on rent. I know. I'm not trying to make excuses, but my laptop broke and I had to buy a new one for work, and it took all my rent money. I have about half of what I owe you right now, I said, holding out the envelope. She didn't take it. Instead, she took a sip of her wine and looked at me over the glass. What do you do for work? Digital marketing. I work for a company downtown. Do you like it? The question surprised me. Yes, mostly. It's interesting and creative. The pay isn't great yet, but I hope to move up. And how long have you lived in my building? About 8 months. Any problems with the apartment? No, it's great. It's in a perfect spot, and I love the building's character. She nodded slowly, still watching me with those sharp green eyes. Caleb, I'm going to be honest with you. I could kick you out tomorrow. I have a long list of people who would love to have that apartment. My heart sank. I understand. A tease. Need a little more time. I'm not done, she said, holding up a hand. I could kick you out, but I'm not going to. Because I like you. You, like me. She smiled, and this smile was different. It made my heart beat faster. You're honest. You didn't try to lie to me or make up a big story. You admitted your mistake and came ready to pay what you could. That tells me something about you. Thank you. But, she went on, I can't just let the rent go without some kind of deal. It's bad for business. Here it comes, I thought. A payment plan, extra fees, something to make my money problems even worse. What kind of deal? I asked. Valentina put down her wine and leaned forward a little. The move gave me a quick look. Down her shirt, and I tried not to stare. I have an offer for you, she said. You seem like a smart and able young man. I could use some help with a few personal things. Personal things? I travel a lot for work. My assistant handles most of it, but some things need a more personal touch. Someone I can trust. I wasn't sure what she was getting at, but I nodded. What I'm suggesting is a deal where you do certain things for me, and in return, we can work out a very good rent situation. What kind of things? She stood up and walked to the window with her back to me. Being my companion, for lack of a better word. Going with me to business dinners and parties. Sometimes just keeping me company. My mouth went dry. Company. She turned to face me, and her look was completely serious. I'm a successful woman. Caleb, I work hard. I've built a business empire, but being successful can be lonely. I don't have time for normal relationships, and most men my age are either married or scared of what I've accomplished. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. She walked over to where I was sitting and sat on the arm of my chair. She was so close I could smell her perfume. It was expensive and made my head spin. I'm asking if you would be interested in spending time with me. Dinners, events, quiet nights at home. In return, your rent would be much lower. How much lower? Let's say $200 a month. My rent right now was $1,800. For just $200, I would have so much extra money. I could actually start saving or pay off my student loans faster. And what exactly would I have to do? She reached out and touched my cheek softly. Her hand was cool. Nothing you don't want to do, she said quietly. I'm not looking for a prostitute, Caleb. I'm looking for company. Someone to talk to eat with, to make me feel less alone. In this big apartment, and if something more happens between us, then it happens. But there's no pressure and no promises other than what I've said. I looked around her incredible place, then back at her beautiful face. This woman was offering to solve all my money problems just for spending time with her. Time with a beautiful, successful woman who could probably teach me things I'd never even thought about. I need to think about it, I said. She smiled and stood up. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Caleb, yes. Don't think too hard. Sometimes the best chances are the ones that seem too good to be true. That night, I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Valentina's offer. On one hand, it seemed crazy. On the other, what did I really have to lose? I was attracted to her. That was obvious. She was beautiful, smart, and sure of herself in a way that was very nice. And the help with money would change my life. The next evening, I called her. I accept, I said. As soon as she picked up, wonderful. Why don't you come up for dinner tomorrow night? We'll talk about the details. Details. Our deal, Caleb. When I might need you, what parties we'll go to together. How we'll handle the personal side of our relationship. The word relationship sent a shiver through me that I wasn't expecting. Spy be there. 7 o'clock, and Caleb. Dress nicely. I want to see how you look when you clean up. Our first official dinner was 3 nights later. I bought a new shirt and tie, spent extra time on my hair, and even bought cologne. When the elevator opened into her home, I found her waiting in a black dress that looked amazing. Much better, she said, looking me over like she approved. You have good taste. Dinner was amazing. Some kind of fish I'd never heard of, cooked by a chef who apparently came to her place twice a week. We talked about everything. My goals, her business, art, travel, books we'd read. You're more grown up than I expected, she said, over dessert. What did you expect? A normal guy in his 20s, all about parties and wanting things right away. But you're different. You think before you talk. You listen. My parents raised me to respect my elders. She laughed. A rich, musical sound. Your elders. I'm not that. Much older than you. 19 years isn't that much. Age is just a number. Caleb, what's important is how mature you are, if we get along, and if we have a connection. After dinner, we moved to the living room. She poured brandy into fancy glasses, and we sat on the sofa, closer than we had before. Our first event is this Friday, she said. A charity party downtown. Very fancy. Lots of important people. You'll be my date, your date. My companion, she corrected. There's a difference. What's the difference? She moved closer to me on the sofa, so close our knees were touching. A date means romance, expecting something. A companion is someone who makes your night better, makes you look good, and can have a smart conversation. And which one am I? She put down her brandy and looked at me directly. That depends completely on you. The tension between us was so thick, you could feel it. I could feel the heat from her body and see the way her eyes kept looking at my lips. Valentina, I said quietly. Yes. What happens if I want to be more than just a companion? She smiled, and this time it wasn't a business smile. It was a smile of pure satisfaction. Then you tell me, she whispered. And we see where. I leaned toward her, and she didn't pull away. When our lips met, it was like a shock of electricity. She tasted like brandy, and what could happen? And when her hand moved to the back of my neck, I knew I was lost. When we pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. That, she said, was not part of our deal. Are you going to charge me extra for it? She laughed and pulled me back to her. I think we can work something out." The charity party was like being in another world. Everyone was beautiful, rich, and important. The women wore dresses that cost more than my car, and the men looked like they were from a magazine. Valentina was stunning in a long silver dress that showed off her body. She introduced me as her associate, and I watched as every man in the room looked at me with jealousy, and every woman looked at her with respect and a little envy. "You're doing very well," she whispered during the party. "Everyone is wondering who you are." What should I tell them? Tell them you're exactly what I've been looking for. As the weeks passed, our deal grew into something more. I went with her to business dinners, art shows, and wine tastings. She taught me about food, wine, art, and business. In return, I was the good-looking guy on her arm that she needed, and more, the company she wanted. The physical part of our relationship grew naturally. After our third party together, she asked me to stay the night. After the fifth, I stopped going back to my apartment except to get clothes. "This isn't what I planned," she told me one morning as we lay in her huge bed, with the city light coming through the big windows. "What wasn't? Feeling this way about you. Wanting you here all the time, is that a problem?" She rolled over to face me, her blonde hair all over the silk pillow. "It could be. You're young, Caleb. You should be out there dating people your own age, figuring out what you want from life. I know what I want." "What's that?" "It's this. This life we're building together. It's not a real life," she said sadly. "It's a deal that got out of hand." "Says who?" She didn't answer, but I could see the struggle in her green eyes. 6 months later, I moved into her home for good. Not as her tenant, not as her employee, but as her partner. We still went to parties together, but now it was because we wanted to, not because of our deal. "People are talking," she told me after a big fundraiser where we had our picture taken together. "Let them talk. They're saying I'm having a midlife crisis, that you're using me for my money." Are you having a midlife crisis? Maybe, but if I am, it's the best crisis I've ever had. And am I using you for your money? She smiled and pulled me closer. If you are, you're terrible at it. You still insist on paying for things. You give me gifts. You work just as hard, as you always have. Maybe I'm just using you for your body. Now that, she said, kissing me softly, I can live with. 1 year after that first late rent notice, Valentina and I were planning a trip to Europe together. Not for business, not for show, but because we wanted to see Paris together, wanted to walk through vineyards in Italy, wanted to see the world. As a couple, do you ever regret it? I asked her as we sat on the balcony of her home, watching the sunset over Seattle. Which part? Any of it? The deal letting me stay, falling for someone 19 years younger. She was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in her glass. I regret that it took me so long to realize what I was missing, she said at last. I've spent so many years focused on building my business that I forgot to build a life. And now I have both, the business and the life, the success and the love. The love? She looked at me directly, her green eyes serious. Yes, Caleb. The love, I love you. Not because you're young, not for your energy, not for what you represent. I love you for who you are, for how you see the world, for how you make me feel like the best version of myself. I love you too, I said, reaching for her hand. Everything about you, your drive, your smarts, your strength, the way you took a chance on some broke kid who couldn't pay his rent. That broke kid, she said, squeezing my hand, turned out to be exactly what I didn't know I was looking for. 2 years later, when people ask how we met, I tell them the truth. I was 3 weeks late on rent. She was a successful businesswoman who needed company, and we made a deal that changed both our lives. Some people are shocked by our age difference and by how our relationship started like a business deal. But what they don't understand is that The best relationships aren't always the ones that start with romance. Sometimes they're the ones that start with honesty, helping each other out, and the courage to see where unusual choices might lead. Valentina taught me that love doesn't always look the way you think it will. Sometimes it looks like a beautiful woman offering you a deal you can't say no to. Sometimes it looks like saying yes to something that scares you. Sometimes it looks like finding out that what you thought was just business is actually the start of everything you never knew you wanted. It makes you wonder if others have found love in such surprising ways. Sometimes life gives us the most beautiful relationships in the most unlikely situations, and it's nice to hear those stories from other people.